For centuries, the Minoans have fascinated historians and archaeologists alike. But who were they really? Were they an advanced civilization ahead of their time, or are we just reading myths into their ruins? Today, we're diving deep to separate fact from fiction and uncover the real story behind one of history's greatest mysteries. Welcome to our channel. Today, we journey back over 3,000 years to explore the Minoan civilization, Europe's first great society. From labyrinthine palaces to legendary myths, the Minoans have left a trail of intrigue that continues to puzzle experts. But by the end of this video, you'll have a clearer picture of who they were, what they achieved, and what still remains a mystery. To truly understand the Minoans, we have to travel back over 4,000 years to an island that would become the cradle of one of Europe's earliest and most mysterious civilizations. The Minoans thrived on Crete, the largest of the Greek islands, surrounded by the sparkling waters of the Aegean Sea. But Crete wasn't just a picturesque island. It was a land of dramatic mountains, fertile valleys, and a coastline dotted with natural harbors, perfect for a society built on trade and exploration. Imagine a place where the mountains provided protection from invaders, the valleys yielded abundant crops, and the sea was not a barrier but a highway connecting cultures. This was the world in which the Minoans were born. Archaeologists trace the origins of the Minoan civilization back to around 2700 BCE. But even before that, Crete had been home to Neolithic communities that laid the groundwork for what would later become a highly organized and sophisticated society. The Minoans inherited these early settlements, learning how to harness the land, domesticate animals, and cultivate crops in ways that would sustain a growing population. As the centuries passed, their villages expanded into towns, and eventually into palace-centered urban hubs that would astonish historians millennia later. Crete's location was more than just scenic. It was strategic. Situated at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe, the island allowed the Minoans to become master traders long before the rise of classical Greece. They didn't just rely on local resources. They sailed the Mediterranean, exchanging pottery, olive oil, wine, and crafted goods with civilizations as far as Egypt, the Levant, and the Greek mainland. The Minoans were essentially the first Mediterranean power to combine maritime skill with cultural sophistication, and their influence spread through trade, not conquest. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Minoans' geography is how it shaped their culture and religion. The rugged mountains and isolated valleys encouraged small, tight-knit communities, but the fertile plains allowed them to produce surplus food, which supported a complex society with artisans, priests, and rulers. Crete was dotted with sacred caves and mountain peaks, which the Minoans believed were the homes of gods and spirits. These natural features were not just part of the landscape. They were deeply embedded in Minoan spirituality, inspiring rituals, offerings, and myths that would later echo through Greek culture. And then there's the question of natural disasters. Crete was a land of contrasts, blessed with fertile soil yet vulnerable to earthquakes and volcanic activity, most famously from the nearby island of Thera. Some historians argue that these events shaped the Minoan worldview, emphasizing both the beauty and fragility of life. But it was also these very challenges that forced the Minoans to innovate, from advanced building techniques to intricate drainage systems that allowed their cities to thrive despite the unpredictable environment. By understanding the origins and geography of Crete, we start to see why the Minoans were not just another Bronze Age society. A combination of fertile lands, strategic location, and a society attuned to both nature and the sea created the perfect conditions for a civilization that would leave a legacy shrouded in both fact and myth. When we look at the Minoans, one of the most fascinating aspects of their civilization is the vibrant culture that thrived on Crete thousands of years ago. Unlike many ancient societies that were built around war and conquest, the Minoans seem to have placed art, religion, and community at the center of their world. Their society was sophisticated, complex, and astonishingly advanced for its time, with a strong emphasis on trade, craftsmanship, and social organization. Life in a Minoan city was bustling, filled with markets, artisans, and festivals that celebrated both the natural world and the divine forces they believed guided their lives. The Minoans had a deeply hierarchical society, but it was also fluid in many ways. At the top were rulers often associated with palatial centers like Knossos, Festos, and Malea. These palaces were not just political hubs. They were cultural and religious centers where administrators, priests, and elite families coordinated trade, ceremonies, and governance. Interestingly, much of what we know about Minoan leadership comes from archaeological finds such as frescoes, pottery, and written records in Linear A and Linear B scripts, which hint at a society organized yet creatively expressive, combining bureaucracy with artistry. Religion played a central role in Minoan culture, and it was intimately tied to both nature and the sea. Shrines, sacred caves, and mountain sanctuaries were common, and rituals often involved offerings, dances, and ceremonies celebrating fertility, the harvest, and the cycles of life. One of the most iconic symbols of Minoan religion is the bull, which appears in art, frescoes, and ritual imagery. Bulls were not just revered for their strength. They symbolize power, vitality, and the divine connection between humans and the natural world. Some of their most famous practices, like bulu leaping, a dangerous acrobatic ritual, may have been both a sport and a sacred rite, blending physical prowess with spiritual devotion. Art and craftsmanship reveal a society that valued beauty, sophistication, and innovation. Minoan artisans were masters of pottery, creating intricately painted vases that depict scenes from daily life, nature, and myth. Frescoes adorned palace walls with vivid images of dolphins, lila, and elaborate ceremonies capturing the vibrancy of their world. Jewelry, seals, and carved ivories show incredible skill and attention to detail, and even the most mundane household items were carefully crafted, reflecting a culture that celebrated aesthetic excellence in every aspect of life. Trade and commerce were also crucial to Minoan society. Crete's strategic position in the Mediterranean allowed the Minoans to become expert sailors and traders, exchanging goods like olive oil, wine, pottery, and textiles with neighboring civilizations, including Egypt, the Levant, and mainland Greece. This constant interaction not only enriched their economy but also exposed them to new ideas, technologies, and artistic styles which they skillfully adapted and integrated into their own culture. Perhaps most intriguing is the apparent role of women in Minoan society. Frescoes and sculptures suggest that women held prominent positions, participating in religious ceremonies, possibly holding administrative roles and enjoying freedoms uncommon in other ancient civilizations. The depiction of women in elaborate dress, engaging in rituals, and sometimes even leading public ceremonies hints at a society that may have been more egalitarian than many of its contemporaries, with gender playing a significant but nuanced role in social and religious life. When we step into the world of the Minoans, it quickly becomes clear that their architectural achievements were nothing short of extraordinary. At the heart of Minoan civilization stood the palaces, the most famous of which is the Palace of Knossos. Imagine wandering through a sprawling complex of over 1,000 rooms, where corridors twist and turn like a labyrinth, grand staircases rise to multiple floors, and walls are adorned with vibrant frescoes that bring the past to life. The scale and sophistication of these structures reveal a civilization that valued organization, beauty, and innovation long before modern urban planning existed. Knossos was not merely a royal residence. It was the center of Minoan political, religious, and economic life. Palaces acted as hubs for administration, storage, and trade. Massive storage rooms held olive oil, wine, and grains, carefully organized in large clay jars known as pithoi. These storerooms demonstrate not only the Minoans' ability to produce surplus resources, but also their advanced system of record-keeping and management, often facilitated by the mysterious linear script. Beyond storage, the palace contained workshops where artisans produced jewelry, pottery, and tools, turning the palace into a hive of industry that combined function with artistry. One of the most fascinating features of Knossos is its innovative architecture. The Minoans mastered the use of multi-story buildings, wooden columns and light wells that allowed sunlight to penetrate deep into the palace interior. Unlike the heavy stone columns of later Greek architecture, Minoan columns were made of wood, wider at the top than the bottom, and painted in striking red and black, giving the spaces a sense of elegance and lightness. Advanced plumbing systems, including clay pipes and drainage networks, were used to manage water throughout the palace, providing running water, toilets, and even sophisticated bathing areas, an engineering marvel that would not be matched in Europe for centuries. The artistic decoration of Knossos offers another window into Minoan culture. Frescoes covered the walls with vibrant scenes of nature, religious rituals, and daily life. Dolphins leaped across the walls of reception rooms, while processions of priestesses and acrobats were depicted in ceremonial attire, capturing the dynamic spirit of Minoan society. These images were not just decorative. They communicated cultural values, religious beliefs, and social norms to anyone who entered the palace, immersing visitors in the identity and power of the civilization. Knossos also inspired legends that have lasted thousands of years. Its maze-like corridors may have sparked the myth of the Labyrinth and the Minotaur, stories that continue to capture imaginations today. Walking through these ancient halls, it is easy to understand why later Greeks saw the Minoans as a civilization of wonder, whose mastery of space, light, and function seemed almost magical. Beyond Knossos, other Minoan palaces like Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros also reflect similar sophistication, each with its own unique layout and artistic style, but all demonstrating the same Minoan ingenuity. These structures suggest a network of centers connected by shared culture, religion, and trade, revealing a civilization that was both centralized and regionally diverse. The design of these palaces, with their grand courtyards, intricate storage systems, and ceremonial spaces, tells us that the Minoans were not only builders but thinkers, planners, and visionaries who transformed the landscape of Crete into a thriving, living masterpiece. When we think of the Minoans, myths inevitably come to mind, stories of labyrinths, bull-headed monsters, and kings with almost divine authority. The legends surrounding this civilization have captured the imaginations of writers, historians, and travelers for centuries, but what is myth and what is reality? To understand the Minoans, we have to navigate the thin line between the archaeological record and the stories that later Greeks immortalized. One of the most famous myths connected to the Minoans is the story of King Minos and the Minotaur. According to legend, Minos ruled a kingdom so magnificent that he demanded human sacrifices to feed a monstrous half-man, half-bull creature imprisoned in a labyrinth beneath his palace. While this story may seem fantastical, historians and archaeologists have long wondered whether there is a kernel of truth behind the myth. The sprawling corridors of the Palace of Knossos, with their twisting passageways and complex layout, may very well have inspired tales of a labyrinth. Some scholars even suggest that bull symbolism, which is pervasive in Minoan art and ritual, contributed to the story of the Minotaur, transforming religious imagery into a legendary creature in Greek imagination. Minoan religion itself blends fact and myth in fascinating ways. Frescoes, seals, and figurines depict bull leaping, goddess worship, and ceremonial processions, hinting at a society deeply invested in ritual and symbolism. These images suggest that Minoans had a spiritual worldview in which nature, animals, and divine forces were intertwined with human activity. To ancient Greeks, these practices were exotic and mysterious, giving rise to fantastical interpretations over time. The figure of the mother goddess or the prominence of female deities in Minoan culture may have inspired later myths of powerful goddesses in Greek pantheon, but the true meaning behind the rituals remains shrouded in mystery. Another area where myth and reality intersect is Minoan warfare, or rather the lack of it. Ancient myths often describe heroic battles and fearsome warriors, yet archaeological evidence suggests that Minoans were not a heavily militarized society. Their palaces were not fortified like those of the Mycenaeans, and weapons found in Crete are relatively rare. This contrast between mythic tales of power and the archaeological record raises intriguing questions. Were the Minoans genuinely peaceful, relying on trade and diplomacy for influence, or are we missing evidence of their military capabilities? Even the story of their disappearance has been colored by legend. Tales of divine wrath, monstrous invasions, and cataclysmic disasters have long been associated with the decline of the Minoans, but scientific research points to more tangible explanations. Volcanic eruptions on the nearby island of Thera, earthquakes, tsunamis, and possible invasions from mainland Greece all contributed to the decline of their society. Yet the way these events, became mythologized speaks to the human need to explain tragedy through narrative, turning natural disasters into epic stories and real kings into legendary figures. Exploring the myths of the Minoans offers a fascinating lens through which we can view their reality. By comparing the stories that survived in Greek literature with the tangible evidence left behind in ruins, artifacts, and frescoes, we begin to see a civilization that was both extraordinary and relatable. The legends are not lies, they are reflections of the awe and mystery that the Minoans inspired, bridging the gap between fact and imagination in a way that continues to captivate scholars and storytellers alike. One of the most compelling questions about the Minoans is how a civilization so advanced, so culturally rich, and so influential could seemingly vanish without leaving a clear record of its decline. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and storytellers have wrestled with this mystery, piecing together clues from ruins, artifacts, and ancient texts, yet no single explanation fully captures what happened to the Minoans. The story of their disappearance is as enigmatic as their myths, and it continues to spark debates that blend science, speculation, and imagination. Some of the most widely discussed theories center on natural disasters. Crete and the surrounding Aegean islands sit on a geologically active region, prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Around 1600 BCE, the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, experienced one of the most massive volcanic eruptions in recorded history. The eruption would have sent shockwaves across the Aegean, creating massive tsunamis that could have devastated coastal settlements and disrupted trade networks. Ash clouds may have darkened the skies, ruined crops, and caused famine. While the Minoans were resilient and resourceful, repeated natural disasters could have weakened the foundations of their society, making recovery difficult and creating instability that left them vulnerable to other threats. In addition to natural calamities, some historians point to the possibility of external invasions. The Mycenaeans, a powerful society from mainland Greece, are believed to have established dominance over Crete. Around 1450 BCE, archaeological evidence suggests that Minoan palaces were damaged or rebuilt in ways that indicate foreign influence or control. Yet, the Minoans' assimilation into the Mycenaean world was not simply a violent conquest. It may have involved cultural blending, as Mycenaeans adopted Minoan art, religious symbols, and administrative systems. This raises questions about whether the disappearance of the Minoans was abrupt and catastrophic, or a gradual absorption into a larger civilization. Another layer of mystery comes from the lack of written records. The Minoans used Linear A, a script that remains undeciphered to this day, making it nearly impossible to fully understand their perspective on the events that led to their decline. Without written accounts from the Minoans themselves, we rely on archaeological evidence and later Greek narratives, which are often colored by myth, legend, and the biases of those who came after. This absence of first-hand explanation leaves us piecing together their story like a puzzle missing key pieces. Even the societal factors may have played a role in their disappearance. A complex civilization built on trade, centralized palaces, and specialized labor is inherently vulnerable to disruption. If trade routes were blocked, resources became scarce, or leadership structures weakened, the entire system could unravel. Combined with environmental disasters and possible foreign invasions, the Minoans may have faced a perfect storm that gradually led to the decline of their culture and the absorption of their people into surrounding civilizations. The mystery of the Minoans' disappearance is compounded by the enduring fascination it inspires. Every excavation, every new discovery sheds light on their achievements, yet raises more questions about their end. Were they victims of nature, or did human forces play the decisive role? Did their myths of labyrinths and monsters reflect real anxieties about survival, or were they purely symbolic? In exploring these mysteries, we encounter not only the end of a civilization, but also the enduring human desire to understand how brilliance can fade into history, leaving behind tantalizing traces that continue to captivate our imagination. Even though the Minoans disappeared over 3,000 years ago, their impact on history and culture continues to ripple through time, shaping civilizations long after their palaces fell into ruins. Their legacy is most immediately evident in the art, architecture, and mythology of later Greek societies. The Mycenaeans, who rose to prominence on the mainland after the decline of Crete, absorbed countless elements of Minoan culture. Frescoes depicting fluid, naturalistic forms, elaborate religious rituals, and even artistic motifs like spirals, dolphins, and bulls appear in Mycenaean art, demonstrating that the Minoans' aesthetic vision endured far beyond their political dominance. The influence of Minoan religion and symbolism is equally profound. The emphasis on female deities, fertility rituals, and sacred animals provided a foundation for the Greek pantheon. Scholars believe that the worship of goddesses in Minoan Crete inspired some of the earliest Greek religious practices, while bull symbolism, famously immortalized in the Minotaur myth, became a recurring motif in Greek mythology and iconography. Even the concept of sacred spaces, whether caves, peaks, or palatial sanctuaries, echoes through the architectural and spiritual practices of classical Greece, suggesting that the Minoans shaped not only material culture, but also the very way later civilizations understood the divine and the natural world. Trade and maritime expertise were another critical aspect of Minoan legacy. Crete's position in the Mediterranean made it a hub of commerce and cultural exchange, and the Minoans' innovative shipbuilding techniques, knowledge of navigation, and extensive trade networks set a precedent for later seafaring civilizations. Their ability to connect distant lands, exchange goods, and disseminate ideas laid the groundwork for the expansive trade networks of the Mycenaeans and, later, the classical Greeks. The Minoans demonstrated that cultural influence could flow as powerfully through commerce and communication as it could through conquest. Even in modern times, the allure of the Minoans continues to inspire. Archaeologists, historians, and tourists flock to Crete to explore the ruins of Knossos and other Minoan sites, marveling at the sophistication of a civilization that existed thousands of years before the height of classical Greece. Artists, writers, and filmmakers have drawn on Minoan myths, particularly the story of the Labyrinth and the Minotaur, as symbols of mystery, complexity, and the interplay between human ambition and the unknown. In this way, the Minoans live on not only in academic study but also in the collective imagination, bridging the gap between past and present. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of their influence is the way they challenge our understanding of history itself. The Minoans remind us that civilization is not always linear and that brilliance can emerge, flourish, and fade in ways that leave both tangible and intangible marks. Their palaces, frescoes, and artifacts offer glimpses into a world of sophistication, creativity, and ritual, while their myths provoke questions about how human societies interpret and remember the past. They were pioneers of urban planning, artistry, maritime commerce, and religious expression, yet so much about them remains shrouded in mystery, compelling modern audiences to continue exploring, questioning, and imagining. Through their art, architecture, myths, and cultural practices, the Minoans established patterns that would resonate through Mediterranean history for centuries. They were a civilization that celebrated life, nature, and creativity in ways that were both practical and symbolic, leaving behind a template of achievement that inspired their successors and continues to fascinate us today. The legacy of the Minoans is not just in what they built or created, but in the enduring human curiosity they ignite, the stories they inspired, and the questions they left unanswered, prompting each new generation to seek a deeper understanding of a world that was as real as it was legendary. As we journey through the world of the Minoans, one thing becomes clear: their story is a delicate balance between fact, myth, and mystery. From the lush landscapes of Crete to the labyrinthine halls of Knossos, from the vibrant frescoes to the legends of bull leaping and the Minotaur, the Minoans were a civilization that captured the imagination of the ancient world and continues to captivate ours. They were artists, traders, sailors, and visionaries, building a society that celebrated life, nature, and creativity in ways that were far ahead of their time. Yet, even with all the discoveries and archaeological breakthroughs, the Minoans remain elusive. Their writing is still largely undeciphered, their rituals only partially understood, and their sudden decline continues to spark debate. It is this blend of brilliance and enigma that makes them so compelling, a civilization that was real, yet almost legendary, tangible, yet mysterious. The legacy of the Minoans reminds us that history is more than dates and ruins. It is a tapestry of human ambition, imagination, and resilience. Their myths and achievements continue to shape our culture, art, and understanding of the ancient world, proving that even when a civilization fades, its influence can echo across millennia. Exploring the Minoans teaches us not only about the past, but also about the enduring human desire to uncover mysteries, to understand civilizations that came before us, and to appreciate the beauty, innovation, and imagination that define human history. And perhaps the true magic of the Minoans is that they leave us asking questions, inspiring curiosity, and reminding us that some mysteries are meant to be explored, celebrated, and imagined, generation after generation.